Seoul's most feared mafia boss was dying, and the only person who could save him was the woman who came to destroy him. They said the poison was irreversible, but the maid knew something every doctor in that room didn't. Ju-hee Hwang wasn't supposed to be touchable, not by rivals, not by federal agencies, not by death itself. His men called him immortal. His enemies just stopped trying. Tonight, he was dying on his own balcony. Seoul glittered 40 floors below. His tattooed back, black ink carved into muscle like armor, was streaked with blood. The most feared man in Korea slumped over cold marble, shaking. Doctors flew in within the hour. Antidotes failed. A second team tried. Failed again. His executives stepped into a quiet corner and began whispering names, succession names. No one noticed the maid standing in the corner, holding cleaning gloves in one hand and something else, hidden, in the other. No one looked at her until Ju-hee's heart stopped for 7 seconds. Then she stepped forward, calm, unhurried, like she'd been waiting for this exact moment. "I can save him." Security moved to grab her, but the monitor flatlined again, and desperation has a way of silencing pride. She reached into her apron pocket, pulled out something small, dark, ancient. No one in that room had ever seen anything like it. By sunrise, Ju-hee Hwang was breathing. But the real question wasn't how she saved him. It was why she was in that mansion at all. Before we go deeper, subscribe, like, and tell me, have you ever witnessed anything even remotely close to this in real life? I will be in the comments section to reply you. They moved him inside within minutes. The penthouse medical wing, yeah, he had one of those, private operating table, IV lines, cardiac monitors, because when you're Ju-hee Hwang, you don't go to the hospital. The hospital comes to you. 3 toxicologists were flown in before midnight, the best money could hire. 2 from Seoul, 1 from Switzerland. Switzerland, in the middle of the night. That's how serious this was. They ran every test, blood panels, neural scans, tissue samples. And when the results came back, even the Swiss doctor went quiet. Engineered neurotoxin. One of them finally said it out loud. Synthetic venom derivative, modified at the molecular level. His colleague nodded slowly. We've only seen this compound twice in documented literature. The third one didn't even look up from his screen. He just said, "Both patients died." Room went silent. They tried everything. Induced coma to slow the nervous system down, blood filtration to pull the compound out manually, experimental synthetic antidote flown in from a private lab 2 hours away. Nothing worked. Ju-hee's body rejected every single intervention like it already knew it was losing. His back arched off the table, a full, violent convulsion, arms rigid, jaw locked, monitors screaming. His second-in-command, Min Jae, stood near the doorway, watching, arms crossed, calm. A little too calm, honestly, but nobody noticed that yet. The lead doctor pulled off his gloves. "I need to be honest with you." He looked around the room. Armed security, trembling executives, a dying empire. Survival odds are near 0. Someone knocked over a glass. An executive started crying, one of the big ones, too, the kind of guy who probably hadn't cried since 2003. "Remove all non-essential staff, now." Security started sweeping the room, cleaners, kitchen staff, everyone out. And then, "No." One voice, quiet, firm. Salima, still standing exactly where she'd been standing all night, cleaning gloves in one hand, eyes on Ju-hee. "Ma'am, you need to leave. You're treating the symptom." She didn't raise her voice, didn't flinch when 2 guards stepped toward her. Not the venom. One of the doctors actually laughed, like a real laugh. "Excuse me? You're a maid." She looked at him, didn't blink, didn't say a word. Then the monitor flatlined. That long, flat, horrible sound. 4 guns raised in her direction simultaneously. But Juhi wasn't moving, and the doctors had just told them they had nothing left. Desperation is a funny thing. It doesn't care about hierarchy. It doesn't care about protocol. It just needs a solution. The room held its breath. Salima reached slowly into her apron pocket, pulled something out. Small, dark, carved from obsidian. And the whole room leaned in. Now, I need you to picture this scene, because it's the kind of thing you don't forget. They moved him to the balcony, her instruction. Nobody questioned it at this point. I mean, what were they going to say? No? Their guy was flatlining on a $40,000 operating table. They'd try anything. Soul stretched out below them. Cold air, city lights, 40 floors of silence. Juhi was laid against the stone railing, shirtless, his tattooed back exposed under the night sky. All that ink, all that power, all that fear he'd built over decades, and he couldn't even hold his own head up. Salima set the vial on the ledge, obsidian, carved by hand, small enough to fit in a closed fist. Inside, a black powdered compound, dark as ash, mixed with something that smelled like earth after rain. One of the doctors leaned in to examine it. She moved it away from him. Just slightly. Just enough. Don't touch what you don't understand. That was the energy. "What is that?" Security captain, hand still on his weapon. "Old formula," she said simply. "My grandmother's." "Your grandmother's?" He said it like she'd just told him the cure was a TikTok recipe. She ignored him completely. She knelt beside Juhi. Steady hands. No shaking, no hesitation. She located the puncture wound on his back, small, almost invisible, just below the left shoulder blade. Blood was still seeping slowly, dark, wrong-colored. "The venom entered here," she said quietly. "It must be drawn out through the same point." She opened the vial, pressed 2 fingers into the black compound, and applied it directly into the wound. Nothing happened for about 4 seconds, 4 very long seconds. Then, Juhi's entire body seized, full convulsion, violent, back-arching, hands gripping nothing, a sound that wasn't quite a scream but wasn't silence either. The monitor flatlined. Again. "Move her!" 2 guards grabbed for Salima. She didn't move. She pressed her fingers deeper into the compound. "Don't touch me." Her voice didn't shake, not even a little. Longest silence of the entire night. The kind of silence where you can hear your own heartbeat, where time does that thing where it just stops. Then, beep. Faint, almost imaginary. Beep, beep. The monitor. Weak, but there. A pulse. Returning. The Swiss doctor actually stumbled backward, like his legs forgot what they were for. Someone in the corner whispered something in Korean. The security captain just stood there, gun half raised, completely unsure whether to arrest her or bow. Salima wiped her hands slowly, looked down at Juhi. His breathing, shallow, but breathing. She picked up the obsidian vial, closed it, slipped it back into her apron pocket, like she'd just finished mopping a floor. Nobody said a word, because nobody had words for what they'd just watched, and somewhere in the back of that room, Min-jae was no longer calm.
He woke up at 4 a.m. No dramatic gasp, no movie moment, just Eyes opening slowly, ceiling coming into focus, the low hum of fluorescent light. He was alive, and the first thing Ju-hee Wong felt wasn't relief, it was confusion. The underground safe room was cold. Concrete walls, steel door, one chair. The kind of room built for hiding things, or people. Salima was sitting in the corner, still in her uniform, still composed, like she hadn't just brought a man back from the edge of death 4 hours ago, like this was just another Tuesday. Ju-hee tried to sit up. His body said absolutely not. He managed halfway, leaned against the wall, looked at her. Long pause. How? Not even a full question, just the word. She met his eyes, said nothing. He tried again. Why did you know? Still nothing. I had 3 of the best toxicologists in the world in that room. His voice was hoarse, rough. Switzerland sent someone, Salima. Switzerland! And you, a maid, walked in with something in your pocket that none of them had. He leaned forward slightly. So I'll ask one more time. Why did you know? She looked at him for a long moment. Then she said, Do you know what your logistics routes funded 5 years ago? Ju-hee went still. Not the kind of still that means confusion, the kind that means he understood the question. She didn't raise her voice, didn't perform emotion. She just talked. Calm, measured, like she'd rehearsed this moment 1,000 times. Because she had. There was a village, East Africa, small, remote, her grandmother's village. For generations, her grandmother had been the community healer, the one people came to when hospitals were too far or too expensive. She knew plants, roots, compounds passed down through lineage. She knew the obsidian formula. Then the syndicates arrived, international trafficking networks using regional logistics routes to move people, quietly, efficiently, funded through layered shell companies, traced, eventually, back to a Korean underground network, Ju-hee's network. He didn't speak. You didn't know, she said, not as an excuse, as a fact. The route was buried 4 levels deep in your logistics chain, subcontracted, deniable, but the money still moved. She looked at him directly. I didn't apply for this job because I needed the income. Pause. I got inside this mansion because I needed answers. Ju-hee absorbed that slowly. The maid was an investigator. The woman who saved his life came here to build a case against it. Silence stretched between them like a wire pulled too tight. She saved him, there was no question about that. But sitting in that cold room, in the 4 a.m. quiet, Ju-hee realized something unsettling. She knew everything. His roots, his money trails, his blind spots. She hadn't just saved his life tonight. She was holding it, and she hadn't yet decided what to do with it. Here's the thing about powerful men. When they go down, somebody always moves to fill the space. Always. And they usually start moving before the body is even cold. Ju-hee called the meeting himself, 36 hours after flatlining on a balcony. Still weak, still pale, moving slower than usual. But he walked into that boardroom on his own 2 feet, which, based on what Switzerland said, shouldn't have been possible. The room was full. Every captain, every lieutenant, senior executives in suits that cost more than most people's rent. They stood when he entered. Old habit, respect, or performance of it. Hard to tell the difference sometimes. Ju-hee sat at the head of the table. Salima stood near the back wall. Nobody invited her. Nobody told her to leave either. After last night, people were being careful about what they said to her. Smart. Min Jae spoke first. Of course he did. Sir, with respect. He folded his hands on the table, measured, professional, the picture of loyalty.
Given what happened, perhaps a temporary leadership transition makes sense. Just while you recover, the organization can't afford instability. Murmurs around the table. Nodding. It sounded reasonable. That's what made it dangerous. Ju-hee said nothing, just looked at him. And Min-jae held eye contact maybe 2 seconds too long, then glanced down. Small thing, tiny, but Ju-hee caught it. See, here's what nobody in that room knew. While Ju-hee was recovering, he wasn't just resting. He was thinking, replaying the night, every detail, every face, every reaction. And one thing kept coming back. When the doctors said survival odds were near zero, Min-jae didn't react. No panic, no anger, no grief. Just stillness. The kind of stillness that only makes sense if the news wasn't news to you. Ju-hee nodded to his head of security. A single folder slid across the table. Security footage from the private dining level. His voice was quiet, controlled. 40 minutes before I collapsed. The footage on the screen showed a drinks tray being rerouted, one specific glass, intercepted briefly, then returned to service. 12 seconds total. Almost invisible. Almost. The compound in my bloodstream, Ju-hee continued, was traced to an experimental toxicology lab, private funding, offshore registration. He paused. The investment signature matches a holding company tied to someone in this room. Nobody breathed. Min-jae's jaw tightened, just slightly. This wasn't a rival hit. Ju-hee leaned forward. This was a transition plan. The room finally understood. This wasn't assassination. It was a coup. Kill Ju-hee quietly, blame external enemies, step into the vacancy. Clean, surgical, deniable. And then, Salima spoke from the back of the room, quietly. The expansion proposal, the one rejected last quarter. Everyone turned. Human trafficking routes into 3 new regions, weapons redistribution. It was tabled because of one vote. She looked at Ju-hee. Yours. Silence. Heavy. Suffocating. If Ju-hee had died last night, that proposal passes by morning. Not an assassination. A removal. Ju-hee sat back slowly, looked at Min-jae, who was no longer looking back. And for the first time since waking up in that cold safe room, Ju-hee Hwang felt something sharper than pain. He felt clarity. He chose the dockyard. Not the penthouse, not the boardroom, not anywhere with cameras or staff or people performing loyalty. Just an old warehouse by the water. Rusted walls, concrete floor, the smell of salt and history. The kind of place where Ju-hee Hwang started, before the empire, before the penthouse, before Switzerland flew someone in to watch him die. Salima arrived first. Of course she did. He came alone, no security, which, for a man who'd just survived a coup attempt, was either very brave or a message. I'm not afraid of you. Maybe both. She had a folder on a crate in front of her, thick, worn at the edges, the kind of folder that takes years to build. She slid it toward him without a word. He opened it, didn't flinch. Payment records, shell company structures, logistics manifests, routes mapped across 3 continents, names, dates, dollar amounts. His name wasn't on most of it, but his money was. The fingerprints were everywhere once you knew how to look, and she clearly knew how to look. I'm not going to insult you by pretending I didn't know, he said quietly. He closed the folder. I knew what the network was doing. Pause. Not all of it, not immediately, but eventually, I knew. Salima watched him, waiting for the excuse, the justification, the but. I shut it down. She blinked. The roots in your file, she started. Closed 3 years ago. He looked at her directly. Every single one. He reached into his jacket, his own folder, thinner, quieter. Inside, financial redirections, anonymous charitable transfers, orphanage funding across 4 countries, medical supply routes to remote villages. He slid one page across specifically. A community rebuilding program, East Africa. She looked down at it. Her expression didn't break, but something behind her eyes shifted. "I didn't do it for credit," he said. "Nobody knows. That was the point." Silence sat between them. Heavy, but different now. Less like a standoff, more like 2 people recalculating. Then Salima did something he didn't expect. She laughed. Small, quiet, tired. "I built that entire file over 2 years." She looked at the warehouse walls. "Infiltrated your household, learned your routines, documented everything." Pause. "I planned to destroy you." She said it plainly, no drama, just fact. Yuhi nodded slowly. "I know. I could still—" "I know that too." Another silence, longer this time. The water outside moved against the dock. Low tide, going out. Then she said it, the thing that changed the temperature of the entire room. "But someone worse is coming." Yuhi looked up. "Min Jae isn't working alone." Her voice dropped slightly. "The expansion proposal. It has outside backing, international, people who don't care about your redemption arc, Yuhi." She almost smiled saying that. Almost. "They just want the infrastructure, and if you're gone, they walk straight in." He stared at her. The man who built an empire on never trusting anyone, sitting in the warehouse where it all began, realizing the only person in his world who actually knew the full truth about him was the woman who came to bring him down. Life is funny like that. Funny and terrifying. Min Jae had prepared a speech, full speech, written out, practiced probably. The man really thought he was about to have his moment. Bless his heart. The Grand Assembly Hall was packed. Every captain, every regional head, senior lieutenants lined the walls. This was the inner circle of one of the most powerful underground organizations in Asia, and they were all here to watch a transition. What they didn't know was which kind. Min Jae stood at the head of the room, composed, polished, dark suit, hands clasped. "As you're all aware," he began, "our leader's condition has left a vacancy that requires—" The doors opened. Nobody dramatic, no music, no entrance. Ju Hee Wong just walked in, slow, still recovering, one hand slightly steadying himself on the doorframe, but alive, very much alive. The room didn't erupt, it just stopped, like someone pulled the power cord on every person simultaneously. 40-something of the most dangerous men in Korea, frozen. Min Jae's prepared speech died in his throat. You could actually see the moment it happened, mid-sentence. His mouth just stopped working. Ju Hee walked to the head of the table. Min Jae didn't move, so Ju Hee just stood beside him, calmly. "Sit down, Min Jae." Low voice, no anger, no theatrics. That was somehow more frightening than shouting. Min Jae sat down. Ju Hee looked around the room slowly, let the silence do its work. Then he nodded. Screens on the walls activated. Security footage, the drinks tray, the rerouted glass, the 12-second intercept. Then financial documents, the offshore lab, the investment signatures, side by side with Min Jae's known holdings. Then the expansion proposal, the trafficking routes, the weapons redistribution. Plan rejected last quarter. By 1 vote. "This wasn't a hit," Ju Hee said quietly. "It was a business decision." The room absorbed that slowly, like cold water. Min Jae tried. Give him credit, he actually tried. These documents could be fabricated. 3 guards stepped away from his side. Physically, just moved. Nobody told them to, they just did. Because that's what loyalty does when it finally sees clearly. It relocates. Min-jae looked around for support. Found none. I want a full council trial, Joo-hee said. Not take him out back, not handle it. A trial. In front of everyone, evidence presented, process followed. Every captain present, every detail documented, nothing hidden. Murmurs moved through the room. This wasn't how things were usually done, and that was exactly the point. Then Joo-hee did the thing nobody expected. He turned toward the back of the room. Salima. She was standing near the wall. Same uniform, same composure, same quiet energy she always carried. Come forward. She walked to the front. The sound of her footsteps in that silent room felt enormous. Joo-hee turned to face his entire organization. This woman identified the compound your specialists missed, traced the entry point your doctors couldn't find, and brought me back when Switzerland said it wasn't possible. Pause. She saved your empire. The murmurs weren't quiet this time. Captains leaning to each other, lieutenants shifting, a black woman in a maid's uniform standing at the head of the most powerful criminal assembly in Korea. Hierarchy didn't just bend in that moment, it shattered. Min-jae stared at her from his seat, realizing the maid he never once looked at had just ended him. The chaos took hours to settle. Council procedures, evidence logged, Min-jae removed from the premises quietly. No explosion, no blood on the floor, just process. Which, honestly, was more unsettling to his people than violence would have been. Because it meant Joo-hee wasn't reacting. He was restructuring. By the time everything was handled, dawn was already breaking over Seoul. The rooftop garden was Joo-hee's one soft thing. Plants, open sky, the city below waking up slowly. Nobody came up here except him, until now. They stood side by side at the railing, not close, not distant, just 2 people who'd been through something that doesn't have a name yet. Seoul stretched out beneath them, gold light hitting glass buildings, the Han River catching the sunrise like it was showing off. Beautiful city, built on complicated things, like most beautiful things are. Joo-hee spoke first. You could have let me die. Not an accusation, not even really a question, just the truth of it, said out loud. Salima didn't answer immediately. She looked at the city. Yes. Simple. Clean. It would have been easier. Pause. My grandmother used to say, the hardest healings are the ones where you don't like the patient. Joo-hee almost smiled. Almost. Power doesn't change the world. She turned to look at him. Choices do. He was quiet for a long moment, the kind of quiet that means something is being decided, internally, permanently. I want to shut it all down. She looked at him. The remaining routes, every operation that touches trafficking, gone. Not restructured, not handed off, dissolved. She didn't respond yet, waiting to see if there was a but coming. There wasn't. The logistics infrastructure is legitimate on its own, he continued. Shipping, supply chain, regional distribution. We rebuild around that. Clean revenue, legal operations. It takes time, but... He exhaled. I have time, apparently. He glanced at her apron pocket. She caught it. Then the harder part. The communities. He stopped. Started again. The places the routes ran through. The people displaced, exploited. I want a reparations program. Anonymous, structured properly, real money, real impact. Pause. Starting with East Africa. Salima looked back at the city. Her jaw tightened slightly, not from anger, from the effort of holding something you've carried alone for a very long time and feeling the weight of it shift. I need someone to oversee it, Juhi said. All of it. The shutdown, the restructure, the reparations. He turned to face her fully. Not as staff. He was careful with the next word. As authority. Independent oversight. You answer to no one inside this organization, including me. Salima turned to look at him. You're offering me power over your empire. I'm offering you power over my empire, to make sure I don't rebuild it wrong. She studied his face, looking for the angle, the manipulation, the thing powerful men always hide behind generous words. She'd spent 2 years learning to read him, and right now she couldn't find it, which was almost more unsettling than if she could. Trust is a strange thing. It doesn't arrive all at once. It doesn't come with paperwork or promises. It comes in small moments, slowly, fragile as obsidian, strong as whatever was inside that vial. She didn't say yes. She didn't say no. She just looked back at Sol and said, "Show me the numbers first." Juhi nodded. That was enough. For now. 6 months later, Juhi stood at a podium. International press, cameras, microphones, suits. The legitimate world. Huang Global Logistics will be restructuring completely. All divisions have been audited. Humanitarian partnerships are now active across 11 countries. Flashes everywhere. Questions shouted in 4 languages. He answered them all, calmly, precisely. The man who once ruled from shadows, standing in full light, choosing it. Meanwhile, 12 time zones away, a village that used to have nothing had a medical center, new building, clean water access, staff hired locally, children in a courtyard outside. The funding arrived anonymously, no name attached, no press release, no credit claimed, just money that became walls, walls that became safety, safety that became future. Salima stood outside her grandmother's old house, different now, restored. She pressed her hand against the doorframe, breathed. 2 years of investigation, infiltration, carrying a secret so heavy it had changed the shape of her posture. And now, children were playing where trafficking routes once ran. She heard footsteps behind her, turned. Juhi. No guards, no security detail, no weapons visible. Just a man, in a simple jacket, looking slightly out of place and not at all bothered by it. "How did you find this village?" "You'd be surprised," he said quietly, "what you can find when you're actually looking." They stood together watching the children. No boardroom, no empire between them, just this. He reached into his pocket, the obsidian vial, placed it in her hand. She looked down at it. "You decide when it's needed again." She closed her fingers around it slowly. The most dangerous person in that mansion was never the man with the empire. It was the woman who could choose whether it lived or died. She came to destroy him. She chose to restore him instead. And that one choice rebuilt an entire village. Makes you wonder, what's one